David Miller had always prided himself on being a good judge of character. At 41, he'd built a successful career as a project manager for a software company in Boston, maintained a small but solid circle of friends, and had long since learned to spot red flags in relationships. Which is why, when he met Ileana Popescu at a charity fundraiser 18 months ago, he was so sure she was genuine. Ileana stood out in the crowd, not just for her striking looks, tall with auburn hair that caught the light like burnished copper, but for the quiet intensity with which she observed everything around her. While others networked aggressively, she remained by the windows, watching the proceedings with thoughtful dark eyes. David found himself drawn to her, abandoning his usual networking strategy to strike up a conversation. "Not much for these kinds of events?" he asked, offering her a fresh glass of wine. She accepted with a small smile. "That obvious, huh? Let's just say it takes one to know one." Her English was excellent, colored by an accent she later told him was Romanian. By the end of the night, they'd exchanged numbers, and David went home feeling a spark of possibility he hadn't felt in years. Their courtship progressed with surprising speed. Ileana, 34, worked as a translator for a publishing house, a job that allowed her flexibility but didn't pay particularly well. She'd been in the States for 3 years, she explained over their third date, having decided to make a fresh start after her parents died in a car accident back in Romania. "It was just too painful to stay," she said, her eyes downcast. "My brother Andre and I were very close to our parents. He stayed in Bucharest, he has his own life there, but I needed to get away." David found himself increasingly captivated by Ileana's quiet strength, her sharp intellect, and the way she would sometimes break into delighted laughter at small pleasures. A perfect cup of coffee, a bird song outside their window, the feeling of sun on her face after days of rain. She was, he thought, both mysterious and transparent, complicated in the way real people are. 6 months after they met, David proposed on a weekend trip to the coast. They were walking along the beach at sunset when he dropped to one knee, presenting her with a modest diamond ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "It's not new," he apologized, "but it has history." "It's perfect," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, of course, yes." They married 3 months later in a small ceremony. Ileana had told him she didn't have much family left, just her brother Andre, who flew in from Romania for the occasion. David's side was slightly better represented. His parents had passed years ago, but his sister Kate attended with her husband and kids, along with a handful of close friends. Andre cut an imposing figure, taller than David by several inches, broad-shouldered with the same dark eyes as his sister, but none of her warmth. He spoke limited English and kept to himself during the ceremony and reception, watching everything with an intensity that made David slightly uneasy. But he chalked it up to jet lag and cultural differences, focusing instead on the joy of the day, on Ileana's radiant smile as they exchanged vows. "Your brother seems intense," David commented later that night as they prepared for bed. Ileana sighed, removing her earrings. "Andre's had a harder time since our parents died. He was always closer to them than I was, especially our father. They worked together in the family business." "What kind of business?" "Import-export," she said vaguely. "Nothing very exciting. Andre tried to keep it going, but without our father's connections." She shrugged. "It's been difficult for him." David didn't press. It was their wedding night after all, and he was caught up in the swirl of emotions, in the reality that this remarkable woman was now his wife. The first 8 months of marriage unfolded with relative ease. They settled into a comfortable routine in David's two-bedroom condo. Ileana continued her translation work, while David was promoted to senior project manager. They talked about starting a family, agreed to try after they'd saved enough for a larger home. Life felt stable, predictable in the best possible way. Then came the call. David was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Ileana's phone rang. He couldn't understand the rapid Romanian on the other end, but he could see the change in his wife's demeanor, the stiffening of her shoulders, the way her knuckles whitened around the phone. She glanced at David, then stepped onto the balcony, sliding the door closed behind her. When she returned 15 minutes later, her eyes were red-rimmed. "Everything okay?" David asked, stirring the pasta sauce. She hesitated. "That was Andre. He's having some problems. Financial problems." David set down his spoon. "What kind of problems?" "He made some bad investments. He might lose his apartment." She twisted her wedding band, a nervous habit. "He asked if he could visit for a while, just until he sorts things out." Something in her tone made David pause. "Visit from Romania? For how long?" "A few weeks, maybe a month at most. He just needs some time to regroup." David considered this. They had a spare bedroom that was currently serving as a home office, but it could easily be converted for a guest. And family was family. If Ileana's brother needed help, what kind of husband would he be to refuse? "Of course he can stay," he said finally. "We'll make it work." The relief on Ileana's face was immediate, but there was something else there too, a shadow of apprehension that David didn't quite understand. "Thank you," she said, embracing him tightly. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. You know that?" He kissed the top of her head, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo. "Right back at you." But that night, as Ileana slept beside him, David found himself staring at the ceiling, unable to shake a nagging feeling of unease. Andre arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks later. David had taken the day off work to help prepare the spare room and pick him up from the airport. The flight from Bucharest had been delayed, and Andre emerged from customs looking haggard, his eyes bloodshot, stubble darkening his jaw. He carried only one large duffel bag, which David offered to take. "I got it," Andre said, the words clipped. His English seemed to have improved since the wedding, though his accent remained thick. The drive home was awkward. David attempted small talk, asking about the flight, about Romania, about what Andre had been up to since they last saw him, but received only monosyllabic responses. In the rearview mirror, he could see Andre staring out the window, seemingly lost in thought. Ileana had prepared a traditional Romanian meal for her brother's arrival: cabbage rolls, a polenta-like dish, and a rich beef stew that had been simmering all day. The moment they walked through the door, she rushed to embrace Andre, speaking rapid Romanian. David caught none of it except what sounded like his own name, at which point both siblings glanced his way. "I hope you're hungry," David said, forcing cheerfulness. "Ileana's been cooking all day." "Starving," Andre replied, managing a thin smile. Dinner was slightly less strained, the food was delicious, and Andre seemed to relax as he ate, even complimenting David on their home. "Nice place, good neighborhood." "We like it," David replied, "though we're thinking about something bigger eventually, when kids come along." At this, Andre and Ileana exchanged a look David couldn't interpret. "Andre," Ileana said, swiftly changing the subject, "tell David about your new business idea." Andre took a long sip of wine before responding. "I'm exploring some opportunities in the import-export sector. Specialty goods from Eastern Europe that are hard to find here in the States." "What kind of specialty goods?" David asked. "Traditional crafts, some food products, spirits. There's a market for authenticity these days. People wanting to connect with their heritage." David nodded. It sounded reasonable enough, though Andre delivered the explanation with a rehearsed quality that struck him as odd. "The issue," Andre continued, setting down his glass, "is startup capital. Romanian banks are challenging to work with, and after some previous setbacks, my credit is not ideal." "Ah," thought David, "here it comes." But to his surprise, Andre didn't ask for money. Instead, he outlined a plan to meet with potential American investors during his stay, to secure partnerships that would allow him to establish an import business with legitimate channels. "I just need time," he concluded, "and perhaps some introductions, if you know anyone in that world." "I might," David said cautiously. "Let me think about who could be helpful." After dinner, Andre excused himself, claiming jet lag. Once they heard the guest room door close, David turned to Ileana. "He seems to have a solid plan," he said, helping her clear the dishes. More organized than I expected from what you told me. Ileana nodded, but her movements were mechanical as she loaded the dishwasher. Andre has always been good at making plans. Following through is another matter. You don't think this import business will work out? She hesitated. I hope it does, for his sake. That night, David woke to the sound of voices. The digital clock on his nightstand read 2:17 a.m. Ileana's side of the bed was empty. He lay still, listening to the muffled sounds of an intense conversation coming from the living room. Though he couldn't understand the words, the tone was unmistakably heated. Andre's voice rising in what sounded like frustration, Ileana's responses low and firm. David debated getting up but decided against it. Whatever they were discussing, it was clearly family business, and his limited Romanian would only make him an intruder. He rolled over, pulled the pillow over his head, and eventually drifted back to sleep. The next morning, neither Ileana nor Andre mentioned the late-night discussion. David left for work, and when he returned that evening, he found them sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out between them, conversation stopping abruptly at his entrance. Working on the business plan? He asked, setting down his laptop bag. Yes, Ileana said quickly. Just helping Andre organize his thoughts. David nodded, noticing the way Andre gathered the papers into a folder, sliding it away from view. Similar scenes played out over the next few days. David would come home to find Ileana and Andre in deep conversation that would halt when he entered the room. Twice more he woke in the night to find Ileana gone, her voice and Andre's carrying from the living room or kitchen, always in Romanian, always with an intensity that belied casual conversation. Is everything okay with Andre's business plan? David finally asked one morning as they prepared for work. Ileana paused in applying her mascara, meeting his eyes in the bathroom mirror. There are some complications, but we're figuring it out. What kind of complications? Just bureaucratic things, import regulations, tax considerations, nothing to worry about. But there was something in her voice, a tightness that made him doubt her reassurance. That evening, David came home earlier than usual, having wrapped up a client meeting ahead of schedule. He entered quietly, hearing Ileana and Andre's voices from the kitchen before they were aware of his presence. This time, the argument was impossible to miss. Andre's voice raised, Ileana responding with equal heat. At the sound of his name, David stepped into the doorway. Both siblings froze, Andre mid-gesture, Ileana with tears streaming down her face. What's going on? David asked, looking between them. Nothing, Ileana said quickly, wiping her tears. Just a disagreement about family matters. It sounded pretty intense for nothing. Andre cleared his throat. My sister and I have different opinions about the best approach to my business venture. She is more cautious than I think necessary. David studied both their faces, noting the tension, the unspoken communication passing between them. I heard my name. I was just saying how generous you've been, Ileana said, letting Andre stay with us. It was a lie, and they all knew it. But David didn't press, not then. I see. Well, I brought home takeout. Chinese okay with everyone? Dinner was a silent affair, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Afterwards, Andre announced he was meeting someone downtown, a potential business contact. Once he left, David turned to Ileana. What's really going on? And don't tell me it's nothing, or just family business. You've been acting strange since he arrived, and I want to know why. Ileana's hands trembled as she cleared the plates. It's complicated, David. I'm a pretty smart guy. Try me. She sighed, setting down the dishes and sinking into a chair. Andre is in some financial trouble, as I told you, but it's worse than I initially explained. He owes money to some people back in Romania, people you don't want to owe money to. What people? She hesitated. There are organizations in Romania, especially after the fall of communism, that operate in the gray areas of the law. Andre got involved with some of them through his import-export business. Are you talking about organized crime? Ileana winced. That's a very American way of putting it, but yes, Similar concept. David felt his stomach drop. How much does he owe? Enough that they're threatening him. That's why he came here, not just to hide, but to try to find a way to pay them back. And how exactly does he plan to do that? Ileana wouldn't meet his eyes. He has ideas, none that I'm comfortable with. Such as, he thinks he can establish a legitimate business here, using my status as a permanent resident to facilitate things. She twisted her wedding band again, but he needs to make money quickly, which means taking shortcuts. Illegal shortcuts. She nodded miserably. And you've been arguing because I won't help him. At least not with anything illegal. She finally looked up, her eyes pleading. He's my brother, David. My only family. But I won't risk what we have, what we've built together. David reached across the table, taking her hand. We'll figure something out. Maybe I can help him find legitimate investors, or we could loan him some money to get started. No, she interrupted, squeezing his hand. No loans. The amount he needs, it's substantial, and I don't want our money anywhere near this situation. Then what do we do? I don't know, she admitted. I've been trying to convince him to go to the police, to ask for protection, maybe even witness protection if he provides information. But he's afraid. David nodded slowly, processing this information. It aligned with what he'd observed, but still left him uneasy. Something didn't quite add up. I'm going to take a shower, he said, standing. It's been a long day. As he walked toward the bathroom, he glanced back to see Ileana burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. David couldn't sleep. Beside him, Ileana had finally drifted off, her breathing deep and even, but his mind raced with the implications of what she'd told him. Organized crime, threats, debts. It was like something out of a movie, not his carefully constructed life in suburban Boston. And yet there was still something off about the whole situation. Ileana's explanation made sense on the surface, but it didn't fully account for the intensity of the arguments he'd overheard, or the way both siblings seemed to be hiding something deeper. The next day was Saturday. Andre had gone out early, mentioning a meeting with a potential business contact. Ileana was in the kitchen preparing lunch when David casually brought up the subject again. I've been thinking about Andre's situation, he said, leaning against the counter. Maybe I could talk to Rob at work. He has connections in import-export. Might be able to point your brother in the right direction. Ileana's knife paused mid-slice through a tomato. That's very kind, but I'm not sure Andre would be comfortable involving your colleagues. Why not? If he's serious about establishing a legitimate business. He is, she said quickly. It's just complicated. The timing, the specific products he's interested in, it requires a certain approach. David watched her carefully. What products exactly? He mentioned crafts, food, spirits, but that's pretty vague. Traditional Romanian items, things with cultural significance. She resumed chopping, a bit more forcefully than necessary. Andre knows the market better than I do. The conversation shifted to other topics, but David's suspicions continued to grow. That afternoon, while Ileana was shopping for groceries and Andre still hadn't returned, he made a decision he never thought he'd make in a million years. He went to his home office and rummaged through a drawer until he found an old digital voice recorder he sometimes used for work meetings. It was small, inconspicuous, with enough battery life and memory for several hours of recording. He hesitated, turning it over in his hands, confronting the moral implications of what he was about to do. Spying on his wife and brother-in-law felt wrong on every level. It violated trust, privacy, the foundation of his marriage, but the alternative, remaining in the dark while something potentially dangerous unfolded in his own home, seemed worse. With a deep breath, he activated the recorder and placed it beneath the living room sofa, positioning it so the microphone faced outward. It was the spot where most of their late-night conversations seemed to take place. That evening, tensions were high at dinner. Andre seemed agitated, checking his phone repeatedly. Ileana was quieter than usual, pushing food around her plate rather than eating. David attempted normal conversation, asking about their days, sharing an amusing story from work, but his efforts fell flat. After dinner, Andre announced he needed to make some calls and retreated to the guest room. David seized the opportunity. I have some work to catch up on, he told Ileana, gesturing toward his home office. Don't wait up for me. In the office, he closed the door and opened his laptop, staring at the screen, but unable to focus. He was playing a waiting game now, hoping his instincts were wrong but fearing they weren't. Around midnight, he heard movement in the apartment. A door opening, soft footsteps, low voices. He remained in the office, lights dimmed, pretending to work while straining to hear what was happening. The voices moved to the living room just as he'd anticipated. After giving them time to get deep into conversation, he quietly made his way to bed, feigning sleep when Ileana eventually joined him around 2 a.m. The next morning, he waited until both Ileana and Andre were out of the apartment. Ileana at a weekend work commitment. Andre once again meeting his mysterious business contacts before retrieving the recorder from beneath the sofa. With shaking hands, he transferred the audio file to his computer and put on headphones. Most of the recording captured ordinary household sounds: the television, footsteps, the refrigerator opening and closing. Then shortly after midnight, voices. The quality wasn't perfect, and his non-existent Romanian made it impossible to understand directly, but the emotional tenor was clear. Urgency, frustration, fear. He could distinguish Ileana's voice from Andre's, could hear his own name mentioned several times. David sat back in his chair, conflicted. The recording confirmed his suspicions that something serious was happening, but without understanding the actual content, he was still in the dark. He needed a translation. Using his work laptop rather than their shared home computer, he began researching translation services. Most required sending in the audio file, which felt too risky. What if the conversation contained something illegal? Instead, he found AI-based speech recognition software that could transcribe and translate Romanian to English. It wasn't perfect. The software struggled with the recording quality, with overlapping voices, with specialized vocabulary. But after several hours of painstaking work, running small segments multiple times, adjusting audio levels, comparing different translations, he had pieced together enough to confirm his worst fears. The conversation, as best he could reconstruct it, went something like this. Andre, they're getting impatient, Ileana. Vasile called today. They want the money by the end of the month, or they'll start looking for other ways to collect. Ileana, what does that mean? Are they threatening you? Threatening me? Andre, they know about your life here. They know about David. Ileana, you told them about my husband? Andre, I didn't have to. They have ways of finding information. That's what they do. Ileana, inaudible? Never should have involved? Andre, it's too late for that now. Listen, I have a plan. It's simple, low risk. Ileana, nothing about this is low risk. Andre, all you need to do is come back to Romania with me, just for a week. We make the pickup. You bring it back through customs. American citizens, something about easier entry. They never search pretty women with American passports. Ileana, smuggling? That's your brilliant plan? Do you know what would happen if I got caught? Andre, you won't get caught. These guys have been doing this for years. The route is established, the customs officials are taken care of. Ileana, and what exactly would I be carrying? Andre, does it matter? Small packages, high value, nobody gets hurt. Ileana, it matters to me. I have a life here, a husband who trusts me, a future ahead of me. I won't risk prison for your debts. Andre, these aren't just my debts anymore, sister. When you helped me move that money 2 years ago, you became part of this too. Ileana, that was different. I didn't know what the money was for. You said it was for starting the business, Andre, and now the business needs your help again. One trip, that's all. The payment for carrying the packages will clear my debt completely. Ileana, and if I refuse, Andre, then we both have problems, big problems. Think about David. Think about what these people could do to your perfect American life if they decided to. Ileana, I need time to think. Andre, time is the one thing we don't have. They want an answer in 3 days. The recording continued, but became harder to understand as the voices lowered. David removed his headphones, his heart pounding in his chest. The implication was clear. Andre was involved with organized crime, owed them money, and was trying to pressure Ileana into becoming a drug mule or smuggler of some kind. Worse, it seemed Ileana had unknowingly helped her brother with something illegal in the past, something involving money, and now they were both being threatened. David sat motionless, trying to process this information. His wife, the woman he'd fallen in love with, built a life with, planned a future with, was being coerced into criminal activity. And based on the conversation, she was resisting, trying to protect their life together. But she hadn't told him the whole truth. She'd hidden her past involvement, whatever it was. She'd downplayed the danger they might be in. As the shock began to recede, it was replaced by a cold, focused anger, not primarily at Ileana, though her deception hurt deeply, but at Andre. He had brought this danger into their home, was threatening the woman David loved, was trying to use their family connection to drag her into his criminal activities. David had always considered himself a nonviolent man, someone who believed in discussion and resolution rather than confrontation. But in that moment, staring at the audio waveform on his computer screen, he understood how someone could be driven to extremes to protect what they loved. He needed a plan, not just to confront Andre and Ileana, but to ensure their safety, to extricate them, especially Ileana, from this dangerous situation. And he needed to decide how much of his marriage could be salvaged from the wreckage of these revelations. With trembling fingers, he backed up the audio file to a secure cloud account, then began making notes, organizing his thoughts, plotting his next move. David spent the rest of the day in a state of controlled panic, researching Romanian organized crime groups, international smuggling operations, and the legal implications of what he'd discovered. The more he learned, the more terrified he became. These weren't petty criminals. They were sophisticated networks that trafficked in everything from drugs and counterfeit goods to weapons and human beings. By the time Ileana returned home that evening, he had formulated a rough plan. He would confront her privately, give her a chance to come clean without her brother's intimidating presence. Depending on her reaction, her honesty, her willingness to break ties with Andre's criminal connections, he would decide how to proceed. "Hey," she called, setting down grocery bags in the kitchen. "Sorry I'm late. The translation project took longer than expected, and then I stopped for food. I thought I'd make that pasta you like for dinner." She was acting so normal, as if their world wasn't crumbling beneath their feet. It made David's chest ache. "Where's Andre?" he asked, helping her unpack the groceries. "Still out. He texted that he's meeting with some Romanian expats about business opportunities." She rolled her eyes slightly. "Who knows when he'll be back?" Perfect, thought David. "Actually, before you start cooking, can we talk? There's something important we need to discuss." Ileana's hands paused over a bag of pasta. "Of course. Is everything okay?" "Not really," he said, gesturing toward the living room. "Let's sit down." They sat on opposite ends of the sofa, the space between them symbolic of the distance David now felt. He took a deep breath, then made the hardest decision of his life, to trust his wife one more time, to give her a final chance to be honest. "I know about Andre's real situation," he began, watching her face carefully. "I know about the debt, the people he owes money to, and what they're asking you to do." Ileana's face paled. "What do you mean?" "I overheard you arguing, and—" He hesitated. "I recorded one of your late-night conversations, had it translated." Her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in anger. "You spied on us? On me?" "I did," he acknowledged, "and I'm not proud of it. But I knew something dangerous was happening in my home, something you weren't telling me about. Was I supposed to just ignore that?" Ileana stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You had no right. Maybe not. But now I know that your brother is trying to convince you to smuggle something illegal from Romania. I know that these people he's involved with are threatening both of you, and I know that you've helped him move money before. He stood as well, moving toward her. What I don't know is why you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was trying to protect you. By lying to me? By keeping you separate from this mess. Her voice cracked with emotion. These people, David, you have no idea what they're capable of. The less you knew, the safer you were. That's not how marriage works, he said softly. We face things together, the good and the bad. Ileana sank back onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. After a moment, she looked up, resignation in her eyes. Ask me what you want to know. I'll tell you everything. And she did. Over the next hour, the full story emerged. Andrea had inherited their father's import-export business, which had always operated in legally gray areas, especially during the communist era when certain goods were restricted. After their parents died, he expanded into more explicitly illegal activities, partnering with a crime syndicate that used legitimate businesses as fronts for smuggling operations. 2 years earlier, he'd asked Ileana to help transfer funds from Romania to the US, claiming it was to establish a legitimate American branch of the business. She'd agreed, not fully understanding what the money represented or how it was earned. Only later did she realize she'd unwittingly helped launder money for the syndicate. Now Andre had lost a significant shipment, whether through theft, customs seizure, or his own mismanagement, he wouldn't say, and owed the syndicate 200,000 euros. They'd given him 3 months to pay, a deadline that was rapidly approaching. His plan was to use Ileana as a courier, bringing high-value contraband, likely drugs or diamonds, she suspected, into the US, where it could be sold to generate the needed funds. And if you refuse? David asked. Ileana's voice was barely above a whisper. They've made it clear they'll come after anyone connected to him. Me, you, no one would be off limits. David sat in stunned silence, processing the magnitude of the threat. Have you agreed to do it? No, I've been trying to find another way. Some compromise that doesn't involve breaking the law or putting us at risk. She reached for his hand. David, you have to believe me. I never wanted this to touch our life. When I married you, I thought I'd left all of it behind. He wanted to believe her, desperately wanted to trust that the woman he loved was still the person he thought she was. But the deception, however well-intentioned, had shaken him to his core. We need professional help, he said finally. Law enforcement. Ileana recoiled. No. Going to the police would be signing Andre's death warrant. These people have connections everywhere, even here in the States. Then what do you suggest? Because I'm not letting you become a drug mule, and I'm certainly not going to sit back while some Romanian gangsters threaten my family. Before she could respond, they heard the front door open. Andre's voice called out from the entryway. Ileana? David? Where is everyone? They exchanged a look of panic. In here, David called, squeezing Ileana's hand in silent communication. We're not done with this conversation. Andre appeared in the doorway, looking more relaxed than David had seen him since his arrival. Good news. I've made some promising connections today. Things are looking up. The casual optimism, the brazen deception, ignited something in David. Before he could stop himself, he stood and faced his brother-in-law. Drop the act, Andre. We know everything. Andre's smile faltered. What are you talking about? The debt, the syndicate, the smuggling plan, all of it. Ileana rose to stand beside David. I told him the truth. No more lies. The transformation in Andre was instantaneous. The affable facade vanished, replaced by cold calculation as he assessed this new development. You shouldn't have done that, he said to Ileana, his voice dangerously quiet. She didn't have a choice, David interjected. I overheard your conversations, had them translated. Andre's eyes narrowed. You've been spying on us? In your own home? When my wife starts having secret, tearful arguments in Romanian with her brother? Yeah, I start paying attention. This doesn't concern you, Andre said dismissively. It's family business. Ileana is my family now, and anything that threatens her concerns me very much. Andre's laugh was bitter. Such the protective American husband. But you don't understand the situation. These people don't negotiate, they don't compromise, and they don't forgive debts. Either Ileana helps me, or we both face consequences neither of us will survive. There has to be another way, Ileana pleaded. There isn't. Andre's control slipped, revealing the desperation beneath. Do you think I haven't tried everything? Loans, investors, selling everything I own? Nothing generates cash fast enough. He turned to David. Unless you have 200,000 euros sitting around, you'd like to donate to the cause? Even if I did, I wouldn't give it to you, David said. I'd use it to get Ileana somewhere safe, far away from you and your criminal associates. Andre's eyes flashed with rage. He took a step toward David, fists clenched. You think you can just take my sister and disappear? You have no idea who you're dealing with. These people have resources you can't imagine. They'll find you wherever you go. Stop it, both of you. Ileana moved between them, hands raised. Fighting won't solve anything. David forced himself to stay calm, despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Ileana's right. We need solutions, not threats. Andre ran a hand through his hair, pacing the living room like a caged animal. There is only one solution. Ileana comes to Romania for 1 week, makes the delivery, and the debt is cleared. Everyone goes back to their normal lives. Except Ileana would be a criminal, David countered, and we'd always be looking over our shoulders, wondering if these people would come back, asking for another favor. It's one time, Andre insisted, one trip. It's never just one time with organizations like these, David said. Once they know someone can be leveraged, they never let go. Ileana sank back onto the sofa, the weight of the situation crushing down on her. What if we went to the Romanian authorities, she suggested. Sought protection there? Andre laughed bitterly. You've been gone too long, sister. Half the local police are on their payroll. The honest ones are too afraid, or too powerless to help. The room fell silent, the impasse hanging heavy in the air. Finally, David spoke, his voice quiet but resolute. I need to think. Alone. I'm going for a walk. David, Ileana started, reaching for him. It's okay, he assured her, though nothing felt remotely okay. I just need some air, some space to process all this. I'll be back. Without waiting for a response, he grabbed his jacket and keys, leaving the apartment and the two siblings staring after him. David walked for nearly 2 hours, his mind racing through scenarios, weighing options, discarding them. The crisp autumn air cleared his head somewhat, allowing him to think beyond the initial shock and betrayal. By the time he returned to the apartment, he had the outlines of a plan. It was risky, potentially dangerous, but it offered a way forward that didn't involve Ileana becoming a criminal or them living under perpetual threat. He found Ileana alone in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, eyes red from crying. Where's Andre? He asked, hanging up his jacket. In his room, making calls. She looked up at him, vulnerable and uncertain. Are we? David sat beside her, taking her hands in his. We have a lot to work through. Trust to rebuild, but right now we have more pressing concerns. Relief washed over her face. You're still with me? I'm angry, he admitted. Hurt that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth from the beginning. But yes, I'm still with you. I meant my vows, Ileana. She squeezed his hands, fresh tears spilling. I meant mine too. I never wanted to bring this danger into our life. I know. And now we're going to find a way out of it. He lowered his voice. I have an idea, but I need to know if you're willing to take a risk. A significant one. She straightened, wiping away tears. Tell me? Over the next half hour, David outlined his plan. It was audacious, built on his limited understanding of criminal organizations, but it addressed the core problem. Andre's debt needed to be paid, one way or another, or none of them would ever be safe. It could work, Ileana said when he finished, but it requires perfect timing, and Andre would have to agree. Leave Andre to me. Can you make the calls on your end? Discreetly? She nodded. I still have contacts in Bucharest, friends from university who work in the right circles now. Good. And one more thing. This might be the hardest part. David took a deep breath. We need to convince Andre that you're willing to be the courier, that you've changed your mind. Ileana blanched. He'll never believe it. We've been arguing about this for days. Make him believe it. Tell him you've realized there's no other way, that you're doing it to protect me, to protect our future. Whatever it takes. The sound of a door opening made them both look up. Andre emerged from the guest room, his expression guarded as he assessed the tension between them. Have you two come to your senses? He asked. David stood facing his brother-in-law with carefully constructed calm. We've been talking about options. There are no options, Andre said flatly. Only consequences. Maybe not. David gestured for him to join them at the table. I have a proposition. Skepticism etched across Andre's features, but he sat, curiosity apparently overcoming his hostility. I'm listening. What if I told you there might be a way to pay your debt without Ileana smuggling anything? Andre scoffed. Unless you've suddenly come into a fortune you haven't mentioned. Not a fortune, but I do have assets, savings, and I have connections to people who might be willing to invest in a legitimate Romanian import business. David leaned forward. Real investors, real business. 200,000 euros worth of investors? In this economy? For a business run by someone with no track record of success? Andre shook his head. These aren't charity organizations, David. They'll want returns, proven concepts. They'll also want exclusivity on certain Romanian products that are increasingly popular here in the States. Traditional crafts, specialty foods, wines, things that align perfectly with your supposed business plan. Ileana caught on quickly. The Maitreya family vineyards, the Olaru pottery workshop, both are looking for American distribution. Andre's eyes narrowed in calculation. Those are premium products, highly regarded. Exactly, David continued. High-margin items with a growing market here. My company has been seeking to diversify our employee benefits packages with unique gifts, experiences. I could guarantee a baseline of corporate orders. It was a lie, of course, or at best a significant stretch of what might be possible. But the seed had been planted. Andre was considering it, weighing the viability against his desperation. Even if this were possible, he said slowly, it would take time to set up. Time I don't have. That's where Ileana comes in, David said, glancing at his wife. She's agreed to make the trip to Romania, as you've been asking. Not as a courier, but to help secure these initial partnerships while I work on the investor side here. Ileana's performance was flawless. She nodded reluctantly, as if this were a painful concession. I don't like it, but David's right. Family is family. If going back to Romania will help stabilize the situation until the legitimate business can take over, I'll do it. Andre studied them both, suspicion battling against hope. And if these partnerships, these investors, don't materialize in time, then we're no worse off than we are now, David replied calmly. Ileana will still be in Romania, still able to help in the other way, if absolutely necessary. The calculation was visible on Andre's face as he considered the possibility. A legitimate business would be safer, more sustainable in the long run. But the immediate pressure of the debt loomed large. I would need some show of good faith, he said finally. Something to demonstrate this isn't just a delaying tactic. David had anticipated this. I have about $40,000 in a personal savings account. I can transfer it immediately as initial capital for the business, and I'll work on a business plan that will appeal to investors, highlighting the exclusivity agreements Ileana will be securing in Romania. It was nearly all of their savings, money they'd been setting aside for a house, for their future family. But if it bought them time, if it made their plan viable, it would be worth every penny. Andre drummed his fingers on the table, thinking. When would Ileana leave for Romania? 3 days, David answered. Time enough to get her affairs in order here, for me to organize the transfer, and for you to alert your associates that progress is being made on resolving the debt. 2 days, Andre countered. They're not going to wait any longer than that. David looked to Ileana, who nodded imperceptibly. 2 days, then. A tense silence filled the kitchen as Andre made his decision. Finally, he extended his hand. Agreed. But understand this. If anything goes wrong, if this is some trick to waste time or alert authorities, the consequences will be severe, for all of us. David shook his hand, fighting the revulsion he felt at touching someone who would so callously risk his own sister's freedom and safety. Understood. After Andre excused himself to make calls, presumably to his criminal contacts, Ileana and David retreated to their bedroom, where they could speak privately. Do you think he believed us? She whispered. Enough to buy us time, David replied. Now we need to move quickly. Make your calls tonight. I'll handle the money transfer in the morning to make it look convincing. Ileana's hand trembled slightly as she touched his face. I'm so sorry for bringing this into our lives. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. You didn't. Andre did. And after this is over, we're going to have a very serious conversation about boundaries with your brother. If this works, she said softly, he won't be a problem anymore. It will work, David assured her, with more confidence than he felt. It has to. The next 2 days passed in a blur of activity. David transferred the majority of their savings to a new business account he established for Miller Popescu Imports LLC, complete with hastily drafted incorporation paperwork. It looked legitimate enough at first glance, though it wouldn't stand up to serious scrutiny. Ileana made discreet calls to old contacts in Romania, speaking in rapid Romanian that David still couldn't understand, but now trusted was aligned with their plan. Andre, for his part, seemed cautiously optimistic. The visible transfer of funds had apparently convinced him of their sincerity, and he spent hours discussing potential products, distribution channels, and market opportunities with surprising enthusiasm. You know, he told David over a tense but civil dinner their final night together, this could actually work. Not just as a solution to my current difficulty, but as a real business venture. That's the idea, David replied. Turn a crisis into an opportunity. Very American of you, Andre said with a hint of his old smugness. I prefer to think of it as practical. Sustainable solutions are always better than quick fixes. Ileana watched this exchange with nervous eyes, knowing, as David did, that beneath the business talk lay a dangerous gamble. If their plan failed, the consequences would be dire. The morning of Ileana's departure arrived gray and rainy, matching the somber mood in the apartment. Her bags were packed, one large suitcase and a carry-on, sitting by the door like sentinels. Remember, David murmured as he helped her with her coat, stick to the plan. No improvisation, no heroics. I know. She kissed him, a lingering, fearful kiss. Take care of yourself while I'm gone. Don't do anything foolish. Andre cleared his throat impatiently. We need to go if we're going to make the flight. They had booked tickets on the same flight to Bucharest via London, maintaining the facade that David fully supported this business development trip. He would drive them to the airport, say his goodbyes, and return home to ostensibly begin courting investors. The drive was mostly silent, the radio playing softly to fill the void. As they approached the airport, David glanced in the rear-view mirror, catching Andre's eye. I'm trusting you with my wife's safety, he said evenly. Remember that. Andre met his gaze without flinching. And I'm trusting you with my financial future. We all have skin in this game. At the departures terminal, David embraced Ileana tightly. "Call me when you land," he whispered. "I love you." "I love you too," she replied, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Always." He watched them walk into the terminal, Andre slightly ahead, Ileana following with squared shoulders and determined steps. Only when they had disappeared from view did David return to his car, hands shaking as he gripped the steering wheel. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part. Instead of heading home, David drove to a coffee shop several miles from the airport. He ordered a large black coffee and settled at a corner table with his laptop. There, he composed a carefully worded email to his boss, requesting emergency personal leave for a family situation. 10 years with the company, with an exemplary record, earned him an almost immediate response granting the time off. Next, he made a call to a number Ileana had provided. "Hello?" A man's voice answered in heavily accented English. "This is David Miller, Ileana Popescu's husband." A pause. "Yes, she said you might call. Is everything proceeding as planned?" "So far. They're on their way to Bucharest now. Are you ready on your end?" "We will be. The moment they land, we begin surveillance. Your wife will not be out of our sight." "Thank you, Inspector Radu. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this." "No thanks necessary. Andrei Popescu has been on our watch list for some time. Your wife's cooperation is valuable." David ended the call, feeling marginally better. Inspector Gabriel Radu was an old university friend of Ileana's, now working with an elite Romanian police unit focused on organized crime. When Ileana had reached out explaining the situation, he had agreed to help, not just for friendship's sake, but because Andrei's criminal connections were targets of an ongoing investigation. The plan was precarious. Ileana would play along with Andrei's schemes, gathering evidence about his criminal associates while under police surveillance. Meanwhile, David had made his own arrangements back in Boston, contacting the FBI about potential international smuggling operations with ties to the U.S. It was dangerous, potentially putting Ileana in the crosshairs of violent criminals, but they had agreed it was their best chance to escape the situation permanently. If Andrei and his associates were arrested, the threat would be neutralized, and with law enforcement protection on both sides of the Atlantic, they stood a better chance than trying to run or hide. Over the next 3 days, David maintained the charade, creating elaborate business plans and investor presentations that would never be used, while regularly communicating with both Ileana and Inspector Radu through secure channels. Ileana reported that Andrei had taken her to meetings with various business associates, men with hard eyes and expensive watches who spoke in euphemisms and coded language. She was doing her part perfectly, expressing interest in legitimate business opportunities, while allowing Andrei to believe she was reluctantly coming around to his smuggling plan as a last resort. On the 4th day, things accelerated. Andrei called David directly, his voice tight with barely contained excitement. "Good news," he said without preamble. "We've secured a partnership with the Maitreya Vineyards, exclusive export rights to their reserve wines." "That's excellent," David replied, maintaining the pretense. "Perfect timing. I have a meeting tomorrow with a potential investor who specifically mentioned interest in European wines." "Even better news," Andrei continued. "My other associates are impressed with our progress. They've agreed to extend the payment deadline by 2 weeks in exchange for a small good faith delivery." David's stomach dropped. "What kind of delivery?" "Nothing to worry about. Ileana has agreed to bring a small package back with her when she returns. Very small, very discreet. Consider it a deposit on our debt." "I thought the whole point of this business venture was to avoid that kind of arrangement." "This is business, David," Andrei said smoothly. "Relationship management. We demonstrate good faith, they extend grace. Simple transaction." "Let me talk to Ileana." "She's resting. The meetings today were exhausting. She'll call you in the morning." After ending the call, David immediately contacted Inspector Radu, relaying the new development. The inspector was unsurprised. "We expected this," he assured David. "It's actually perfect. Gives us concrete evidence of smuggling. not just association with known criminals. Your wife will be protected, I promise you. Despite these assurances, David barely slept that night. When Ileana finally called the next morning, he could hear the strain in her voice. It's happening faster than we anticipated, she said quietly, as if afraid of being overheard. Andre says I'll be carrying diamonds. Small, easy to conceal, high value. Are you sure? Not drugs? Pretty sure. I overheard him arguing with someone about the product. They specifically mentioned diamonds because they're easier to get through customs. Less risk. Inspector Radu says they're ready. Just follow their lead. I'm scared, David, she admitted. These people, they're more dangerous than I remembered. The way they look at me, like I'm just a tool to be used. You're not alone, he reminded her. The police are watching, and I've made arrangements on this end too. What kind of arrangements? Better you don't know the details. Just trust me, okay? A brief silence. I trust you. Always. 2 more days passed. David received updates from both Ileana and Inspector Radu, tracking the developing situation. Andre had arranged for Ileana to meet with his criminal associates, who provided detailed instructions for carrying and declaring the diamonds, hidden inside a specially designed false bottom in her carry-on luggage. We'll move tomorrow, Inspector Radu informed David during their evening call. Once the contraband is in her possession, we'll have what we need for arrests. Will Ileana be safe? As safe as possible in these circumstances. We'll have officers positioned throughout the handoff location. The moment the diamonds change hands, we move in. David ended the call feeling a complex mix of hope and dread. After tomorrow, this nightmare might finally be over, or it could spiral into something even worse. He was preparing for bed when his phone rang again. Ileana's number. Hey, he answered, relief flooding through him at hearing her voice outside their scheduled call times. Is everything okay? The voice that responded wasn't Ileana's. Hello, David. Andre's tone was ice cold. We need to have a conversation about loyalty. David's blood froze. Where's Ileana? Put her on the phone. She's here, temporarily unharmed. Whether she stays that way depends entirely on you. If you hurt her... Save the threats, Andre cut him off. You're in no position to make demands. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about your little arrangement with the police? That I don't have my own sources within the department? David's mind raced. How much did Andre know? How compromised was their plan? I don't know what you're talking about, he stalled. Inspector Gabriel Radu, Andre said almost casually. Ileana's old university friend, now working for Organized Crime Division. Did you really think that connection wouldn't be noticed? In the background, David could hear Ileana's muffled protests. She's your sister, what are you doing? David said. She betrayed me, Andre replied. But if she and her stupid American husband do exactly what I say, maybe we can all get out of this alive and in one piece. What do you want? David asked, cutting to the chase. Simple. The business account you established. Transfer everything to the account I'm about to text you. Every cent. Then book yourself on the next flight to Bucharest. And then what? Then maybe, just maybe, you get your wife back. How do I know you haven't already heard her? There was rustling. Then Ileana's voice came through, shaky but clear. David, don't come here. It's a trap. They know everything. More rustling, then Andre again. Satisfied? You have 1 hour to make the transfer. 6 hours to be on a plane. I'll text you an address in Bucharest where to meet us once you land. The call ended abruptly, leaving David standing in his darkened bedroom, heart hammering against his ribs. Everything had gone catastrophically wrong. Their careful plan had been exposed. Ileana was being held captive by her own brother, and now he was being ordered to Romania, undoubtedly walking into a trap of his own. But there was one element of their plan that Andre didn't know about. Couldn't know about, because David hadn't told anyone, not even Ileana. With trembling fingers, he dialed a number he'd been given by the FBI agent he'd contacted days earlier. This is Special Agent Parker, a crisp voice answered. This is David Miller. The situation I told you about. With my wife and her brother? It's escalated. They have her in Romania. Are you certain? I just spoke with her kidnapper, her brother. He wants me to transfer money and fly to Bucharest. Don't do anything yet, the agent instructed. We need to coordinate with our international partners. Where exactly in Romania is she being held? I don't know, but I have a contact in the Romanian police, Inspector Gabriel Radu. He's been compromised somehow, but he might still be able to help. Give me his contact information and stay where you are. We'll send someone to your location immediately. David provided the information, then paced the apartment, checking his watch obsessively. The 1-hour deadline for the money transfer was approaching rapidly. His phone buzzed with a text, the account information from Andre, as promised. David stared at it, torn between following the FBI's instructions to do nothing and fear for Ileana's safety if he didn't comply. Just as he was reaching for his laptop, prepared to make the transfer regardless of the consequences, there was a sharp knock at his door. 2 FBI agents, a man and a woman, showed their credentials. Mr. Miller? I'm Agent Parker. We spoke on the phone. This is Agent Chen. The woman gestured to her colleague. May we come in? The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The FBI established communication with their Romanian counterparts and with Interpol. David's apartment became a temporary command center, with secure communications equipment set up on his dining table. We've located Inspector Radu, Agent Parker informed him around midnight. He's alive but injured. It appears there was a mole in his unit who alerted Andre's associates to the surveillance operation. And Ileana? Have they found Ileana? Not yet, but we have leads. The Romanian authorities are focusing on properties associated with the crime syndicate Andre is connected to. The deadline for the money transfer passed hours ago, David pointed out, anxiety clawing at his throat. What if they've already heard her? They want the money more than they want revenge, Agent Chen assured him, and they want you in Romania, which suggests they're planning something bigger than simply punishing your wife. Like what? The agents exchanged glances. Based on what you've told us about Andre's debt and his desperation, they may be planning to use both of you as couriers. American citizens, married, traveling together. You'd raise fewer flags at customs. So I should go, David concluded. Let them think I'm cooperating. Absolutely not, Agent Parker said firmly. That would give them 2 hostages instead of 1. Our best chance, your wife's best chance, is to locate and extract her before they realize we're involved. Reluctantly, David agreed to stay put, though every instinct screamed at him to get on a plane, to do something, anything, rather than sit helplessly waiting for updates. By dawn, there was news, not the breakthrough they were hoping for, but progress. We've identified 3 potential locations where your wife might be held, Agent Parker reported. Romanian tactical units are preparing to raid them simultaneously. When? Within the hour, we should know something soon. Those 60 minutes were the longest of David's life. He couldn't eat, couldn't sit still, could barely breathe as he waited for news that would either end this nightmare or confirm his worst fears. Finally, Agent Parker's secure phone rang. She answered, listened intently, then covered the mouthpiece. They found her. She's alive. David sagged against the wall, legs suddenly unable to support his weight. Thank God. Is she hurt? Agent Parker returned to her call, asking questions in rapid succession, then ended it with a nod. She has minor injuries, bruises mostly, but is otherwise unharmed. They're taking her to a secure location now. And Andre? Not at the location where they found your wife, but they did capture 2 members of the syndicate. The search for your brother-in-law continues. Within minutes, arrangements were made for David to speak with Ileana via secure video call. When her face appeared on the screen, pale with a darkening bruise on her cheekbone, but blessedly alive, he nearly wept with relief. David, her voice cracked. I'm so sorry. Andre figured it out, about Inspector Radu. He has someone inside the police department. It doesn't matter now, you're safe. That's all that matters. Agent Parker leaned into frame. Ms. Popescu, I'm Special Agent Parker with the FBI. I want to assure you that you're under protection now, both from Romanian authorities and through international cooperation with our agency. You don't know my brother, Ileana said quietly, or the people he works for. For the next 3 days, David remained under FBI protection in Boston, while Ileana was kept at a secure location in Bucharest. The Romanian authorities, working with Interpol, conducted a massive manhunt for Andrei Popescu and the leaders of the syndicate he was involved with. On the 4th day, there was a breakthrough. We've received intelligence that your brother-in-law is attempting to flee the country, Agent Parker informed David during their morning briefing. He's arranged for transport through a smuggling route across the border into Serbia. Will they intercept him? That's the plan. Romanian special forces are positioning near the expected crossing point. They should have him within hours. Later that afternoon, David received permission to fly to Romania. With FBI escort, he boarded a direct flight to Bucharest, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks at the prospect of reuniting with Ileana. The flight was long but uneventful. Upon landing, he was met by Romanian officials, who escorted him directly to the safe house where Ileana was being kept. Their reunion was emotional. Tears, embraces, whispered assurances that they would get through this together. The bruise on Ileana's cheek had faded to a yellowish smudge, but the shadows in her eyes spoke of trauma that would take longer to heal. Have they found him? She asked as they sat together, hands intertwined. Have they found Andrei? Before David could answer, there was a knock at the door. Inspector Radu entered, his arm in a sling but otherwise appearing recovered from whatever assault he had endured. David, Ileana, he greeted them. I have news about your brother. Ileana tensed beside David. Is he in custody? Inspector Radu's expression was grave. No, I'm afraid there has been a complication. He took a seat across from them. The intelligence we received was accurate. Andrei was indeed attempting to cross into Serbia last night. However, it appears he failed to pay the full amount demanded by the smugglers. There was a disagreement. What kind of disagreement? David asked, already dreading the answer. The fatal kind, Radu said simply. Andrei Popescu's body was discovered this morning in a remote area near the border. He had been shot multiple times. Ileana made a small wounded sound, her hand tightening around David's. Despite everything Andrei had done, despite the danger he had put them in, he was still her brother, the only family she had left. We believe the smugglers were connected to the same syndicate Andrei owed money to, Radu continued. It appears they decided he was more valuable as a message to others, who might consider failing to pay their debts than as a courier or associate. He was a fool, David said softly, then immediately regretted it as he felt Ileana flinch beside him. Indeed, Radu agreed solemnly. Though perhaps not the justice system we would have preferred, it does effectively end the immediate threat to you both. The syndicate considered Andrei's debt a personal matter. With him gone, they have little reason to pursue either of you. You're sure about that? David asked, unwilling to trust in safety too quickly after everything they'd been through. As sure as we can be in these matters. Additionally, the raids conducted during the search for Ileana resulted in several high-profile arrests within the organization. Their operations have been significantly disrupted. They'll be focused on internal issues for some time. You and your wife were leverage over Andrei, just peripheral figures with no direct involvement in their business. Ileana wiped tears from her cheeks. What happens now? Now, Radu said, standing, you both return to the United States under continued protection until we're absolutely certain the threat has passed. Your cooperation has been invaluable in this case, and both our government and yours are committed to ensuring your safety. After Radu left, David and Ileana sat in silence for several minutes, processing the finality of Andrei's death and what it meant for their future. I never wanted this, Ileana finally whispered. Despite everything, he was my brother, my blood. I don't believe he would have hurt me. He was angry, desperate. He felt that I had betrayed him and done something stupid in going to the authorities. He thought that the only way he could fix the mess was to convince you to do what he wanted by pretending to threaten me. I know you didn't want this, David said, drawing her close, and I'm sorry for your loss, genuinely. But I'm not sorry that we're safe, that we can go home and begin to rebuild our life without fear. Can we? Rebuild, I mean? She looked up at him, vulnerability plain on her face. After all the lies, the deception, can you ever truly trust me again? It was the question that had been hovering between them since the moment David had confronted her with his discovery. The question whose answer would determine whether their marriage could survive this ordeal. I believe you never intended to bring this danger into our lives, he said carefully. I believe you thought you'd left it behind when you came to America, when you married me. And I believe that when faced with an impossible choice between loyalty to your brother and protection of our future, you ultimately chose us. He touched her cheek gently. Trust can be rebuilt, Ileana. It will take time, honesty, work from both of us, but I'm willing if you are. I am, she said. No more secrets, no more protected half-truths. From now on, we face everything together, the good and the bad. Together, he agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss.